All right, welcome back to our Alien Invasion series of videos brought to you by the Python Crash Course book by Eric Mathis. And now we are going to continue on developing our ship, and we need to be able to move the ship so it can shoot towards the aliens. So we're going to start off to do that within our alieninvasions.py. So we created the check events because what we're going to be doing is checking for some events that are going to be important, such as pressing some keys. And you press the keys to move the ship. So we're going to build here after the sysx. We're going to come here and give it an else if event.type is equal to a pygame.keyDown. This is all caps, key down. And the key down that we're going to be looking for is that if event.key is a pygame.k underscore write. And you see, here's the nice thing about using Pygame is that all of these have been already created for us, and we're just going to go in, grab them, and bring them into our program. So we're looking for an event type being a key down. Specifically, if it's the right key, then we want to move the ship to the right. Okay, makes sense. So how could we do that? Well, we could say, self.ship, and we're going to move the rectangle that is its position. We're going to create the x, and we're going to plus equals 1. And so what this is going to do, right, if this is what we were going to do, every time we press down the right arrow key, our ship's rectangle, which determines the position, it has an x and y position, its x position will increase by 1. So if we press the right key, the x position moves to the right because it's going to increase its x value by 1. But we'd have to hit the x key over and over and over and over again, and that might be kind of tedious. So what we're actually going to do is program the ability for continuous movement. All right? And to get continuous movement, we're actually going to flip over here to the ship, and inside of the ship here, we're going to define another function. We're going to put it in here between the init and the blip me. So make sure it's lined up correctly. All these definitions should be within the same line. And we're going to call this update. And this update will update the self. And we'll throw that in there, and we'll get our doc string in here. This is going to update the ship's position based on the movement flag. And we talked about this idea of a flag before. Flags we set to either be true or false, and then some condition can possibly change those from what their previous state was to a new state. And so this update is going to operate and update the ship's position based on a flag, whether it's true or not true. And we need to create this flag, but we're not going to create it within the update. We're actually going to create it within the init method. So that's why I had you put this here by the init method, is we're going to come down here, we're going to put a new hashtag, and this is going to be our movement flag. So we'll say self dot moving right. We're going to set that equal to false. Initially, it's not going to be moving right because we only want it to move right when we push the right arrow key. So we initially set the self-moving right to false. And then we can update that here with this method such that if self.moving right, then we're going to do self.rect.x plus equals 1. So it's that same line of code, a little bit different because before it was self.ship, and that's because we were in the alien invasion, so we had to refer to the ship that would belong to the alien invasion. Here it's going to be part of the ship itself, so that's why we only have self.rect.x plus equals 1. And now that we have this updated within the ship, we'll go ahead and file save this, and we'll come back over to our alien invasion, and now we're going to update this a little bit. So instead of saying self.ship.rect.x, we are just going to change it to self.ship moving right equals true. So if the key event is K right, so if we're hitting the right arrow key, then that will change the moving right to true. So as soon as we hit it, as soon as that key down registers that it's the right arrow key, our ship is going to continuously move right because the self-moving right is now going to be true. So every time we update, it's going to be moving right. So we're going to need to kind of change that though. That's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Now let's enter. Now let's shift tab. Okay. So the key down makes you move right. But what happens if we want to stop moving right? Because right now it's going to currently keep moving right, keep moving right, keep moving right forever. We have to have a way to stop it from moving right. So we're going to change it to an else if event.type equals a pygame dot key up not quite right. There we go. So if the event is key down and the key down is key right, we're going to move to the right continuously until it registers an event of the type key up. Once it gets that key up, then we're going to switch it. If the key up type is the event.key is the pygame dot k underscore right, then what do we want to happen? Well, we want self. We can actually just take this line here, copy, we'll bring it down here, paste it. But once we key up, we want to set this back to be false again. So key down sets the self-moving right true, and a key up we'll change it back to false. But that's only going to work if we're updating, if we're calling the update method. The update method in the ship is what actually adds 1 to the x value. So we're going to have to add this in to our run game. So we're going to come up here to our run game. We're checking for events. After we check for events, we need to self.ship, because this method belongs to the ship object, which we created. So we're going to check the events, we're going to update the ship, then we're going to update the screen. And now that's going to allow our ship to move to the right. But we're also going to need it to move to the left. So in order to do that, I want you to pause the video and program the ship to move left. You've seen all the code that we did to move it to the right. You need to be able to move it to the left now as well. So pause the program, move it to the left. Okay, so hopefully you have got everything programmed, and once you run it now, you should be able to go to the right, you should be able to go to the left. But what you'll notice is actually if you keep going left, the ship kind of disappears. There's no stopping the ship from exiting the screen. And the speed's kind of the same as what it is. So we're gonna make some adjustments to those two things now. So we'll go ahead and close this, and we'll bring back up our code. And we're going to go into the settings in order to adjust the ship's speed first. So we're in our init, and we have the screen settings here. Let's go ahead and create a new hashtag for our ship settings. And we're going to go in here and we'll say self.ship_speed. And that's going to equal to 1.5. All right, and so that's going to allow us to kind of change the ship's speed when we want to. And in order to do that, make this setting relevant to our ship, is we're going to come back in here, and here where we created the self.screen equals the AI screen, we're also going to come in here and we're going to do self.settings is going to equal AI underscore game dot settings. And then we're going to come down after we start each new ship at the bottom center. We're going to come down and we're going to put a new one here. And this is going to be store a decimal value for the ship's position. And this is going to be self.x equals float self.rect.x. There we go. And then down here in our update method, we are going to change this to update the ship's x value not the rectangle. So while that was working well before, we're going to change this a little bit. So we're just going to make it self.x plus equals self.settings.shipSpeed. And then we're just going to do the same thing down here. We'll get rid of this. So it's just ship.x. And then we'll just do this as well, so that it moves the same speed left and right. And then because we've changed it from there, we need to kind of update the rectangle object, because it has to get the value that we've been changing, so that, remember, the rectangle, the rect is actually what's moving and what's being referenced. So we change the x value, and then we can come down in here and we can do self.rect.x equals self. Man, my typing is just not good. And there we go. So we've now updated this. So we'll save. We'll come back over here to settings and save that as well. So when we come back in here and run without debugging, we should be able to move, and you see that it still moves left and right, but it's definitely quicker because we're moving 1.5 instead of 1. So it allows us to move our ship much faster. Okay, excellent. So the last thing we need to do here is to limit our ship's range, because that was the other issue that was happening, is we were able to go all the way off the screen. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to go back here to the ship.py, and under the update, we're going to change, so it says if self-moving right and self.rectangle.right is less than self.screen underscore rectangle dot right. So what do we do here? Before we said if we're moving right, we're going to increase the x position. And that's, as long as we're moving right, we're just going to keep getting larger and larger and larger. But now we added the and condition that our rectangle's right side has to be less than the screen's rectangle's right side. So as soon as our ship gets to our right side edge, hits the screen's right side edge, and they're equal, this whole thing will evaluate as false. And if an and statement has a true and a false, it's going to evaluate as false. So this will no longer be adding. And so we're going to do the same thing here, except we have to say and self.rect.left is greater than, now here we can save ourselves a little bit of typing, because the left side is 0. The right side could be any number, really, so that's why we try to program it to a value, a variable value, so that when the variable changes, it updates automatically. But the left side is 0. There's not really going to be a change in there. So we can save ourselves a little bit of time and energy. So I'm going to go ahead and save this We'll come back to Alien Invasion. We'll run it. And now we'll see as I go to the right, it stops. Going to the left, it stops. And you have to trust me that I am continuing to push right and it will not go off the screen anymore. So there we go. Now we have our ship moving from left to right, nice and smoothly, while limiting it from going off the screen. And let's break there, and we'll come back in the next video. Take care.